Good morning. Sorry I'm a little bit later than normal getting started. Just one of those days when things kept coming up. Anyway, I hope everyone is doing well. So we're picking up with chapter 5 again. And we have said that this chapter 5 is a little bit unusual in that it starts out talking about different kinds of environments, and we spend half of the entire chapter talking about the different kinds of land environments, terrestrial environments. And then we had also talked about water type environments, all different kinds of water environments. And then we finally get to sort of the importance or the main theme of the chapter, and that's biodiversity. So we did all of this introduction. Where does life live? That's what we've done for this first half of the chapter. And now we finally get to the main idea behind the chapter is a discussion of biodiversity. And so with biodiversity, I know I posted in several locations on my PowerPoints a video dealing with these Yellowstone wolves. And for like 100 years, wolves were gone from Yellowstone. And they were having a lot of problems in Yellowstone with loss of biodiversity because we didn't have the apex predator to keep all of those mid-level consumers under control. And so things were out of balance, and it's been a remarkably successful program, reintroducing the wolves, getting the ecosystem back into a more balanced functioning system, and biodiversity is increasing, and that's the whole point of it. So when we talk about biodiversity, we can say, well, what do we mean by biodiversity? And one meaning behind biodiversity could be genetic biodiversity, the number of different genes that are there. And you can think about this in a variety of ways. The easiest example would be things like a bison or a cheetah. And we don't really know the story behind the cheetah, but we do know the story behind the bisons. Bisons were driven to near extinction. They were almost wiped off the face of the earth. Buffaloes, that's what a bison is. They were almost wiped off the face of the earth. Literally, they were reduced down to a few hundred animals. So when you look at any bison, go anywhere and examine its genome, you'll find that there's a very limited number of different genes because they lost all of that diversity in the genes that had occurred over millions of years of mutations. And so that's one form of biodiversity. In other cases, sometimes when people are studying things like bacteria or plankton, little single-celled organisms, they figured out, well, I can actually go and take a sample of water and just do a genetic analysis and analyze what are the genes that are present. And so you could do a genetic analysis of the genes, many different species in a community. So both of these are examples of genetic biodiversity. The one that everyone would know about and understand without much explanation is species biodiversity. It's the number of different species living in an area. That would be related to the wolf example. And then we have this third form of biodiversity, which is ecological biodiversity. So in the case of Yellowstone, without the wolves, we didn't have the top level trophic feeding level. We didn't have the apex predators. And so you had a lower level of ecological biodiversity. You had a reduction in the number of trophic levels and niches. And so what happened in the example of Yellowstone, the reason, one of the ways that biodiversity is increasing has to do with the plants that the elk love to eat. And they were losing some of these aspens and some of these kinds of plants that elk love to eat. So why would the wolves make a difference? These are shrubby type plants. And if you're an elk and there's no wolves, you just go in and you eat them. But if there are wolves, these shrubs are a really great place to hide, and you know that elk are going to come there to eat. And so you have this thing called fear ecology, where the elk, they want to eat those aspen, but they're a little bit scared. And so it protects the aspen. And so you end up having an increase in biodiversity as a result of that. I'm going to go on and stop here, and I'll talk about this next point on a separate video because we're getting over 5 minutes.